Epstein saga underscores the role of ethical responsibility and institutional oversight in safeguarding both legal and reputational interests. Indeed, it is a sad, tragic tale on how unscrupulous actors weaponize influence and access, and the need for more vigilance, transparency, and accountability. Corporate leaders in the different social era need to be protecting their organizations and individuals alike with more deliberate policy interventions. It did not come as a surprise that the top corporate moguls we revere the most are turning out not to be ethical icons. What was perhaps more surprising is how much information locked up in communication, like emails, which were then considered private, can suddenly hit headlines and pose a serious reputation risk, compelling major adjustments and scandal pulling down actors at the highest levels of government, politics, and business. Jeffrey Epstein was well positioned, very well educated, and credible to mingle with the so called highest in the business and political circles, selling access to power and maintaining the highest and most coveted social networks that executives have been taught are indispensable to be at the cutting edge of enterprise and global business. He did it all very well, a financier, generous philanthropist, and friendly listening confidant, also able to provide discreet experiences and entertainment only for those able to afford the full exploration of their fancies. Come the so-called sexual revolution, indeed a revolution that was ushered lavishly by liberal ideology in the late 50s and early 70s, which challenged traditional norms and pulled down old boundaries of decency. Of course, what we read flooding the headlines had to be somewhat inevitable, if not a deliberate phase, as society becomes increasingly dulled and indifferent to the sordid revelations. Networks are critical for business, especially at the top. Attendance at social events and exclusive gatherings mean you have arrived and can be opportunities to be embedded within the most elite financial circles and influential decision makers. Philanthropy and institutional donations are easily corrupted as universities, think tanks, and research institutions in need of funds will hold their nose at ethical or moralistic oddities, perhaps even quietly endorsing them directly or indirectly through the lifestyle of more liberal professors who pushed the Freudian myth of a life without boundaries. Sigmund Freud has long convinced academia that conservative religious beliefs are essentially delusions, and also that turning away from these types of ideologies is preferable because religion will not lead to fulfillment. Do what you like, especially if you can write the check, and it seemed to work for decades as the private indiscretions were kept out of headlines by a well-oiled press who had little to say against the new normal until the Epstein phenomenon broke with the fake shock that attended the revelations. But I want to dwell more on lessons for business, and one hopes business will be listening. Also, nothing in all I'm saying suggests that all billionaires are bad, and I have no persons directly or indirectly in mind. The first lesson could be that great wealth and influence, which facilitates access to top networks, can be especially toxic to personal and corporate reputation and needs to be cautiously navigated. The old adage is true: choose your friends carefully. Loneliness due to only a small circle of trusted friends will seldom lead to all you have built in shreds. Second, learn to embrace transparency, not just in public scrutiny and ensuring accountability, but noting that very opaque spaces where powerful decisions are made can come back to haunt you, as there is no way of attesting to what actually happened and why and what did not. Avoid being the type of executive that people come to keep secrets. In many cases, you are being initiated without knowing into a wider club of expanded indiscretions. The same applies to getting special favors and poorly documented opaque concessions that serve your selfish business interest at no apparent cost. You may be called upon to pay the price later. Third, businesses must have documented and clear ethical standards and a simple process to manage adherence to it. Ethical standards should be explicit and should include guidelines for evaluation and handling legal and moral implications of associations with controversial figures. Businesses must also have and implement policies to prevent abuse and protect reputations. Fourthly, agents and third parties, intermediaries that are often used for the dirtier work in, say, negotiating compromises with the authorities and channeling gifts and favors without staining corporate hands, can appear acceptable but will almost always lead to further complications, as this tends to be where other problematic vices disguised as safe interaction or worse, entertainment hides. We know that inclusion or mention in the files does not always imply any ethical wrongdoing or criminal activity. The bigger reveal is on how wealth, social access, and philanthropy can be easily leveraged to cultivate powerful relationships, and how vices unchecked can implode, eventually dragging many down. And still on the Epstein saga, Morgan McSweeney just resigned as Sir Keir Starmer's chief of staff, saying he's responsible for advising Starmer to appoint Peter Mandelson as Britain's ambassador to America, despite Mandelson's links to Epstein. The Times called for caution and corporate vigilance and discipline. Let me know your thoughts. Hello, this is Global Business Insights, where we look at the world from a business perspective and bring you news, views, and analysis that helps to understand and navigate the somewhat turbulent context. Continuing with the subject of corruption, Axel Fischer, a former Bundestag member in Germany, was convicted for his involvement in a bribery and reputation laundering scandal. The case concerned European politicians who received bribes to improve the public image of the Azerbaijani regime and suppress criticism within the Council of Europe, even as human rights activists and political prisoners remained incarcerated in Baku. Since 2017, Transparency International has advocated for accountability in the Azerbaijani laundromat case, urging authorities in all implicated countries to follow Germany's precedent and implement concrete measures to protect democratic institutions from covert foreign influence. In the United States, Gary Kalman, director of Transparency International, recently discussed observed trends such as the weaponization of anti-corruption laws and the selective relaxation of market controls to benefit those with stronger connections. He further contends that discretionary enforcement contradicts core anti-corruption objectives intended to serve the public interest and should not be manipulated to advance narrow political or economic agendas. Transparency International continues its efforts to uphold foundational U.S. legislation, encouraging the administration to reinstate the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. The organization is also securing new commitments from Congress to enhance anti-corruption measures within U.S. foreign assistance, thereby establishing a framework for future aid to promote transparency and the rule of law. Additionally, Transparency International advocates for robust anti-corruption safeguards within cryptocurrency markets. And to Africa, corruption and trial cases continue. Nigeria's former oil minister stands accused in UK courts of accepting gifts and bribes in exchange for special favors. Some observers suggest this is only the visible part of a larger, deeply entrenched system of institutional corruption, with the gifts mentioned being merely a minor detail within the broader narrative. And in NNPCL, the National Oil Company of Nigeria, the CEO Bayo Ojulari says that though his expertise is upstream, he sees that the NNPCL refineries do not work because the organization did not have the operational capacity to run functioning refineries, adding that we should be thanking Aliko Dangote for his refineries. The CEO says everybody focused on financing an EPC, adding that the financier gets paid, the EPC contractor delivers and moves on. Then you are left for the next 20 to 30 years to run the refinery, and that is where we failed. A shocking claim that an NNPC, despite the well-known wealth of experience and talent, after over 50 years of operations, does not have the operational capacity to run a refinery, but Dangote can. A decade ago, comprehensive studies on the refineries in Nigeria came to a similar conclusion, but the government, with righteous zeal, preferred the myth that injection of billions of dollars for turnaround maintenance will bring refineries back to life. The termites of corruption for Africa have led to huge holes in a bucket, which obviously will not retain any water. Progress is stunted despite the best of intentions and many brilliant and laudable but wasted efforts. Institutionalized corruption is about the way we do things. It is at the core of the societal fabric in the continent and intricately woven in governance of many nations, desperately in need of an ethical revolution. To other stories, as markets watch whether the recovery in tech stocks seen on Friday will be sustained, Deutsche Bank says the recent sell-off in AI and software-exposed stocks is showing no signs of easing. Last week's declines dragged the S&P 500 down almost 30% from their October 2025 peaks, as the AI trade seems to be entering a new era of skepticism despite rollout of new AI tools. Still, it was a week of volatility as the Dow reached 50,000 for the first time ever on Friday, in a volatile week in which markets sank before abruptly shooting higher. In Africa, Ghana's Securities and Exchange Commission has asked local fund managers to cut back on offshore investments as it seeks to protect the steady currency and strengthen macroeconomic stability. Ghana is emerging from its most severe economic crisis in decades and is expected to complete a 3-year IMF support program in August. Still on Africa and the IMF, last week Zimbabwe agreed to a staff-monitored program with the International Monetary Fund. This is seen as a first step on the way to a closer engagement with the fund and an eventual loan program. Finally, on the blight of corruption, which is a global problem, the director of Zurich-based private bank Julius Baer Stefan Bollinger says Switzerland should maintain a public register of bankers who have violated their professional duties as it rebuilds its reputation following the Credit Suisse collapse. This, he said, is done in US, UK, Hong Kong, and Singapore, and prevents bad actors from simply crossing to the other side of the street and carrying on as if nothing had happened. It may also be advisable for more African countries to consider adopting similar measures. Well, that's it on this special edition of Global Business Insights. This is Bode Oshosami. Please do not forget to subscribe and hit the notification button. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.